Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are checking out another Mattel Jurassic World Dominion set, and this time we've got ourselves the Dr. Ian Malcolm and Velociraptor set. This set, although looks pretty cool, and it's definitely a really neat looking version of a Mattel Raptor, it's at the same time kind of a letdown because I believe there was supposed to be a juvenile Baryonyx in this set initially. And in my opinion, I think it would have been that, mechanical arm Baryonyx, but something happened, I'm not sure what, along the way that caused them to abandon those plans and go with this Velociraptor, which almost seems like the most ridiculous thing in the world because one thing we always say is that we have way too many Mattel Velociraptors, but clearly they must sell well because they continue to pump them out all the time, and at least with this one, it definitely looks like it's probably one of the better Mattel Raptors they've released, but I personally would have way rather to have that mechanical arm or juvenile Baryonyx, whatever it was going to be. But as far as the packaging, you can see it's pretty much your standard. You can also see some of the stuff that we have included with this one, which of course is the Velociraptor, Ian Malcolm, and we've got some extras here, including actually some Locusts, which is pretty cool. The first time we've had some Locusts, which, that's kind of one of the main storylines of Jurassic World Dominion, so you would think we would get some of those, I guess. And then here on the back, you can kind of see what's included, as well as a look down here at some of the other figures like this that are out, which we have the Owen and Parasaurolophus, as well as the Maisie, Beta, and Lystrosaurus, which is a very, very strange and mysterious set because I haven't really seen too many pre-orders going up for that one, but these ones of course, are on Big Bad Toy Store, which is where I purchased mine. So let's go ahead, pop these out of the box right now, and check them out. So here we go. We now have everything out of the packaging and looking pretty cool. Yet again, that Raptor is definitely a nice one. It is so refreshing to see paint from the head all the way out onto the tail and painted toenails. Like, doesn't get much better than that, I guess, except for the fact that we could have had painted fingernails. But the Locusts as well look pretty cool, even though they're more of a brownish coloration in Dominion. They're more of a green here with the Mattel version. And Ian Malcolm looks okay, but I feel like Ian looks more like his stunt double rather than actually looking like Ian or Jeff Goldblum. But as a whole, it definitely is a fairly fun set. Definitely another very cool kind of story pack set here from Mattel. So let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So starting with our Ian Malcolm figure, first of all, we'll get this little zapper thingamajigger that he has here out of his hands, and you can take a look at Ian, and you can see that as far as Ian goes, he looks okay, but at the same time, again, he doesn't really look that much like Ian. I feel like one of the biggest problems, first of all, his glasses look crooked, but one of the biggest problems would be the glasses. Something about those glasses just makes him look like he's almost trying to be in disguise rather than looking like Ian. But you can see that the glasses themselves are sculpted pretty nicely and painted pretty nicely. Once you get close, it kind of resembles Jeff Goldblum, but not perfectly. You can also see that we have some nicely painted eyes, the eyebrows, as well as some facial hair and the lips. So he looks pretty cool. Pretty much looks like he does in Dominion as far as the overall appearance goes, just not perfectly the likeness. And you can also see that he's got some nicely sculpted out hair, nicely painted hair with a gray, which also looks pretty cool. As you move down through his body, you continue to see all sorts of really nice, very fine detail to his clothing. You can see like wrinkles and creases and stuff like that. It's all, of course, given that very black coloration, although actually this is almost more of like a very dark gray. And then, of course, his shirt and pants are more of a black. But you can see the hands are also nicely sculpted. You've got the knuckles and everything there. And I can't really see. I try to see sometimes if there's like paintwork on the fingernails. Not really. There's actually some chipped paint on the finger right there. But you can see the belt and everything that he wears. He's also got kind of that belt buckle painted out with like a silver or a chrome type color. And then as you move down, you can continue to see again some nice detailing throughout the pants as well as the boots here of Ian. Definitely a fairly nice looking version for the Dominion style Ian Malcolm. It's nice to now have a Dominion version of Ian Malcolm, but I would say I feel like they could have done better. I feel like the older Ian Malcolm figures looked a lot more like Ian than this newer version does. As far as articulation goes, though, you can see we have articulation in the neck. We also have articulation in the arms. It's going up and down. We've also got the elbow. It can also swivel, but it seems like it's really having a hard time going out that way. There we go. So it did go out there, but it's a little stiff currently. We also, of course, have the swivel in the midsection, and then hip articulation can also go out, but the jacket kind of stops that a little, and then you have knee articulation. So kind of your standard when it comes to human figures from Mattel. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not their best human figure either. And then you've, of course, got his little extra here, the little weapon that he's got, and you can see it looks pretty cool. Really nice glossy blue for that area, and then a black for the rest. As far as the remainder of the weapon goes, you can see it looks pretty decent, and I do like the kind of glossy look to the bluish area here, but it's not really anything all that exciting. And then we have our Locusts, and the Locusts actually look pretty neat. I mean, they look fairly reminiscent to what they look like in Dominion, and they have that really cool kind of translucency to them, which also looks pretty neat, even though the Locusts in the film, again, were more of like a brown and didn't really have like a translucent look to them. You can see that we do kind of have that here for the Mattel version, and again, with that greenish coloration, they do look really neat. Not quite screen accurate, but very cool regardless, and it also has, if my camera would focus on it, it also has some really, really nice looking fine detail, even in the legs. Like you could see some nice detailing in the legs. And you do actually get 3 of them, so you've got yourself quite a few of these Locusts now. And it's the first time we've had Locusts in the Mattel line. So if you were a fan of the Locusts from the film, which I thought they were pretty cool, then you now have the opportunity to enter some into your collection from Mattel. And then our Velociraptor here is definitely a nice looking raptor. Again, sculpt wise, it doesn't look like a brand new sculpt that I'm really noticing. It looks pretty much like every other Mattel Raptor always has at this point. But we, of course, do have a brand new paint scheme for this one. And I feel like they almost went a little bit further than they normally would, maybe as an apology for losing out on that baryonyx, and gave us some pretty decent coloration on this one. So you can see that we have a greenish tone for the majority of the body, but we also have a gray that kind of runs up here into the face, all around the eye socket. Even some areas up in the palate have that grayish tone. You can also see it up here on the top of the head. The eyes are painted with a fairly dark yellow and given a black pupil, a black slit-like pupil. They have a nice gloss coat as well. That eye is absolutely horrendous. I don't know what happened there. The pupil almost doesn't even exist in that eye. But this side looks nice. Maybe I'll touch this one up just to kind of fix that, because that looks really, really bad for the figure. But we do have an articulated jaw, of course. The inside of the mouth has a nice pinkish tone. Nice kind of an off-white for the teeth as well. They look pretty good. Everything has a nice gloss coat on the inside of the mouth. Boy, you don't even want to look at this side. But you have a similar look to the grayish tone over here as well. And then as you come back up here to the top of the head, you start to see an alternate tone of green, kind of a darker green, sort of splotch and stuff here in the back of the neck. And that continues to run down. As you have that darker gray run down, you also have that kind of splotchy green running down the back of the neck. On the lower jaw, you can see we have a nice light gray, and that runs down the throat region. But in typical Mattel fashion as of late, it stops right there in the throat and never reaches the underside. It actually could have looked really cool if we would have had some more of that color running along the underside, but unfortunately we do not. I will say the head and actually more like the neck region looks a little different. It might be slightly different from previously released Raptors, and if not, I can't exactly pick out off the top of my head which Raptor had that sculpt before, because the neck just looks a little bulkier than previously released Raptors. But as you move down, you continue to have that same very cool looking appearance with the dark gray and that kind of darker green. Oh, it's sort of like a lighter tone, but a little bit darker than the body that we have there, and how it kind of just designs and splotches back and forth, and honestly looks really, really neat. As we continue to move along, you can see that we actually don't stop the paint in the hip region like we normally do, and we run that all the way out onto the tail, and the green does stop a little ways out into the tail, but the dark gray runs almost the entire way out into the tail before transitioning back to the green there for the tip. So with paint running the entire pretty much course of the tail almost, it actually looks so much nicer than your average Mattel Raptor does. Unfortunately, you can see we don't have any paint for the fingers, but we do have paint for the toenails. We have a very nice glossy dark gray for the nails, which looks really good, but of course we skip the dew claws. You can also see we have a speckling on the figure on top of everything, so a little added extra coloration as far as that goes. That's really about it for the figure, but honestly, this is a really nice looking Raptor. Like, way better than a lot of the Raptors Mattel has released because we have coloration through the entire figure pretty much. Definitely a massive step in the right direction. Even with the sloppy eye paint, it's a gorgeous Raptor. It is another of those figures, however, that I would think we don't really need a comparison for, because honestly, we've had a million Velociraptors already. We've had so many human figures already as well. I don't feel like we really need to measure them or give size comparisons for or anything like that. Maybe we could measure the Locusts if you're really intrigued by the size of them, but you're looking at about, I'd say, a little over 3/4 of an inch, or right around like 2.5 centimeters for the Locusts. So they are pretty small. But as a whole, again, we've had so many Raptors and so many human figures in the past that I don't think a comparison or a size for those figures is really going to help anyone, because by now you definitely have a pretty good idea as far as the size of pretty much everybody except maybe the Locusts. So this brand new Velociraptor and Ian Malcolm set is pretty cool. It's a little bit of a letdown because we did lose out on that Baryonyx, and I was so looking forward to it. Hopefully, maybe Mattel will make one at some point, because I don't see why they wouldn't, but at the same time, we are now moving pretty far out from the release of Dominion, and we still have not seen one yet, and it doesn't look to be in the works for any figures coming in the future. Maybe we'll get one for like the Hammond collection or something. Could keep my fingers crossed, as we've already got a Baryonyx sculpt. It shouldn't take too much to kind of alter it and maybe shrink it down a little bit, but again, we did still get one of the best looking Velociraptors that I think we've had from Mattel, so there is a huge plus as far as that goes. The Raptor is gorgeous as far as the paint job. The sculpt, of course, is really nice. It's a Mattel Raptor. It's very highly detailed and looks really cool overall, but that paint job is honestly one of the nicest I've seen on a Mattel Raptor in a very long time. They did deliver quite a bit of paint application for this figure, and that's a huge plus, something that Mattel really should focus on doing more often, because it just changes the overall appearance drastically from looking really lazy to an actual good looking figure, and that's definitely what we have for this Raptor. Of course, we could have had that lighter coloration running along the underside or painted nails on the fingers, but it still is quite nice regardless. And then Ian looks okay, but again, I feel like Ian looks more like Ian's stunt double rather than Ian Malcolm. But the sculpt and everything for the most part looks pretty good as far as the fine detail goes, especially in the clothing department of Ian. And the paintwork as well is really quite nicely done, very precise, no sloppiness aside from a chip of paint in the finger. And that, of course, would be something I would imagine would be limited to mine, not everybody's. But again, the likeness of the figure isn't perfect to Jeff Goldblum, but it's still not terrible either. And then, of course, he has that extra kind of little weapon, which is pretty cool. And on top of all of that, we also have the Locusts, which I actually really quite like, because I feel like if there's one thing that Mattel should have released for Dominion, at least as far as like a small figure like this, we probably should have had a Locust, because there's so many Locusts, and they are like a main part of the film through the entire film, so it's pretty cool to actually have a few little extras here as far as 3 different Locusts that they've given us. And the sculpts of those are quite nice overall, and even though there's only like a greenish coloration that's kind of like a translucent look, it still looks pretty cool. So, is this the best set ever? Absolutely not. But is it a pretty cool set? Yeah, for sure. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Big Bad Toy Store. So make sure you check that link. Go grab yourself this set before it sells out, and like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.